And I'm excited to be here. Happy Black History Month and happy post Valentine's Day. Wishing you all lots of love. And I'm really excited today to be talking with Vonettia Calloway. There you are. Okay, cool. Hi. So, coming to us from Richmond, Virginia, Vonettia Calloway is the founder and director of the Black Vegan Experience. She's also the author of just a sweet, glorious children's book with a story behind it called My Color is Coconut. And Vonettia, I haven't known you a really long time, but for as long as I've known you, it seems like almost everything in your life has a story behind it. You kind of live in such a full, rich way that the stories seem to attach. And we're really fortunate today to get to hear some of those, and primarily the story of you. So you sent a really interesting resume. I wish all our guests could see what you did because you brought in some humor and some wonderful things. But what jumped out to me most was this sentence: although God spoke directly to me concerning the life of animals before I was vegan, I awakened to the plight of the animals after watching the film Farm to Fridge. So can you kind of unpack that for us, particularly what God revealed to you about animals?
Okay, so just to be completely transparent, hello everybody, and thank you for such an amazing introduction, Victoria. Um, Most of us are, whatever faith we connect to, we're supposed to be studying, right? And so honestly, I didn't read the Bible like I should have. We learn how to fake it, you know how it goes. And so as I began to develop a relationship, a personal relationship, because a lot of times we're honoring the faith of our parents or grandparents, whoever, care for us, and you don't really get it, quote unquote. And I remember I had a driving class a while ago, and then most recently, this was probably, gosh, we've been in this house 12 years, maybe 10 years ago. I was coming, and we're in a very wooded area. Our subdivision is way into the county part. So as I was coming around the back road, there was this little squirrel, and they're all little, right? Compared to the car. And I remember like, uh-oh, here it goes. And I'm like, why did he try to commit suicide? But anyway, I'm trying to not hit him or her. And I hit it and I hear a bump. And it's like, oh, well, they don't have a soul. And immediately God chastised me and said, but you didn't create them. Like, oh, sorry, Dad. And from that moment on, I recognize the fact that so many of us take things for granted because we didn't get involved in it. We weren't involved in the creation of it. It wasn't connected to us. But when we're held accountable or reminded that we're accountable for those choices, even if they don't have a soul or they don't believe the same way or they're smaller, it's just as powerful to honor their life. So
Wow. Like I said, the stories find you, and that's a dazzler. Direct experience of the divine happens not all the time, and I think because it's not just like every 10 minutes we tend to think, does that happen? Well, yeah, and it happened to you. So then just tell us. We'll get a little bit less divine, but it's pretty divine to go vegan. So what happened after watching Farm to Fridge?
well, I had actually my journey started with the Daniel fast through our church. It was a collective fast, again, faked a lot in my childhood and in young adulthood, but had made the decision because of what happened to my body when I tried to go back. And I didn't go vegan, guys, to be transparent, because of the animals, even though I respected animal life. I've always been a diehard recycler. Before my children could walk, they knew how to recycle because, again, our faith talks about stewardship. So if you believe in scripture, in the beginning, God created, heavens and earth, and then along came Adam and, so forth, so on. But he was commanded to take care of the garden and all of the inhabitants of it, not to lord over it. So that's stewardship. And so I felt like even though I didn't create the earth, my job is to take as best care as I can of it in my personal life, right? So as we began to move through and I'm learning more about veganism and all the different components of it, although I didn't go vegan for the animals, I watched Farm to Fridge because I was actually doing a vegan outreach for the youth in a community close to us. And I was like, I was looking for a short film because it was going to be outreach where we introduce veganism. We show them a video. We eat a little vittles, from New Vegan. And then we have a discussion afterwards. And it was supposed to be, in my mind, middle schoolers who could grasp all these concepts, get permission slips and all that jazz. And then I watched it and I was like, maybe this is not the right movie. Oh my gosh. And I'm crying like, I can't believe this is how animals are treated. That's not humane. Who would want that kind of energy going into their body? It was horrific. And how can you just be so callous with life in general? And it was just sad. And so after I saw that, it just kind of tugged at my heart. And then whenever someone questioned why, what's the big deal? I love steak, da 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 da. I'm like, oh, you must not know what happens to that animal before it becomes your steak. And maybe if you saw what happened, because you can tell people a story all day long, but until they can visualize it and connect to it, it's not always going to have the impact that you would like it to.
So you mentioned the Daniel fast. For people who don't know what that is, can you just briefly tell us?
Okay, I'll do my best, but briefly. So if, if any of you have ever fasted before, you're sacrificing something. Usually it's meat, it's sugar, it's something. But a Daniel fast is a little bit more stricter than just a traditional fast or intermittent fast, because not only are you giving up any animal products, you're also giving up sugar, you're giving up alcohol, and you're giving up unleavened bread. And if you wanted to find out like the connection to scripture, well, first of all, we already know about the garden, but jumping forward to the book of Daniel, there are two different parts in scripture. One is 10 days, one is 21 days, where trying to shorten it, he was captured by King Nebuchadnezzar, Babylonian, tried to convert him, make him eat his way, live his lifestyle. And Daniel, he declined. He was like, I will only eat what my God calls me to eat, which was parse, P-A-R-S-E, akin to fruits, vegetables, seeds, nuts, and berries, and then challenge them. And so again, I think everyone should go back and read it because it helps to break down the strength that is gained from what God created instead of us trying to eat creation and the consummation of animal products. So
Right.
it's pretty powerful. And it helps you, if you believe this way, to remove the idols in your life that are in the refrigerator. Because we go to the fridge when we're hungry, but more so when we're tired, when we're bored, when we're mad, when we're sad, when we're angry, all of those things. It's just so many. And I was like, I didn't connect to it. And then also how it happens to balance us out. Like all of the toxins that we consume, even when we're living our best healthy life, when you get rid of anything but the fresh fruits, vegetables, seeds, nuts, and berries, I feel like you become more one with God. So it's pretty intense for me.
Yeah, it's a great story, and I love it that so many churches are doing it. I've also heard the Daniel story called history's first controlled nutrition experiment, because Daniel and his friends were doing what we would today call a whole food, plant-based kind of diet.
Yes.
And the
Yes.
king's soldiers were eating, the meat and the alcohol and all that. And so the comparison at the end was Daniel and his buddies had it going on in terms of strength and muscle development and all that.
Absolutely.
And the other guys didn't. So it's sort of like, wow, it's like thousands of years ago, but the game changers. So
And it still touches on the two of the stereotypes that follow veganism. One, it was associated with wealth, like the king's meal was associated with wealth because he felt like what Daniel ate would show that he was neglected and not cared for, right? And then on the flip side, that's the manly masculine piece of it. And there's no way you could be sustained by just what's in the garden. So it's really cool.
it is indeed. So let's talk about the Black vegan experience. So how did you come up with the idea and what does it do? Sometimes it seems like, oh my gosh, there's so many organizations doing so much great stuff, but so hard to keep up with them all. And then I hear about one like yours, which is so unique that it's like, sometimes I think, do we need so many organizations? Well, yeah, when they're this different and interesting and important, we do. So tell us about yours.
So I encourage everyone to grab a ticket, first of all. But basically, where it came from, again, was vision from God. After you learn about the health disparities that plague the Black and Latina communities, and unfortunately, the disconnect between plant-based hospital systems that don't include them and make it more multicultural. It pulls on your heart, and it makes you wonder, like, what is intentional and what is not. And so the vision was born over a Vitamix demonstration at Costco. Myself, my daughter, 'cause I'm a teacher, guys, so I would talk so much with my hands, and then my daughter's a nutritionist. And we met an RN, her husband, who was a naturopathic physician, and she shared about her trainer and her doctor, who were all plant-based vegan. And I was like, oh, there's more Black people doing this? Like, I thought I was the weird person. And so as we continued our conversation, and they shared with me that they had attended this event with the hospital system that put on the conference, and that over the years of me hearing about it, I hadn't been able to attend because I taught in September and they were always in September, that they hadn't become more diverse. And I was like, well, if they're not going to invite us to the party, we'll just throw our own. And that's where the Black Vegan Experience was born. And it's a marriage between a health conference and a vegan festival. The difference between the events that we host, my organization, Committee of Consciousness, is that ours are alcohol free. You can, get lit, turn up whatever else at a different time, but I'm not allowed to bring alcohol into my classroom, and the world becomes my classroom when we travel with our events. So it's the same thing. And I'm not as limited as I was in the classroom, even though I can reach the kids and they can go home and tell a story. At the events, I get their mom, their dad, their aunts, their uncles, their cousins, their aunties, their grandparents. Like, we get everyone. And it's a whole event that engages the whole family and the community together. There's so many stereotypes that people believe to be true about Americans because they've never been to America. They only see us on TV, right? It's the same thing with vegans. It's the same thing about Black culture. But when you bring people together, then you get to see, oh, wow, that was not, I was thinking inside the box instead of out of the box. When it comes to flavor, when it comes to who's vegan, why they're vegan, and hearing people's personal experiences, like, you just have no idea how deep it goes. Or again, why we don't have the same connections to the humane component. But you see it a lot in mainstream veganism. So again, that's why we want to have all of it encompassed in one place. You might only get that one opportunity to share.
So I know you have a lot of cool stuff coming up, and you can certainly tell us about that, but I really want to know about what happened. I think it was last year in Tulsa, and why you chose Tulsa.
It was so powerful. So I don't know how much you all know about Tulsa, Oklahoma. It was deferred to a couple of different times right before the social unrest with Mr. George Floyd losing his life. And I had heard it in conversation, no, actually in movies with my husband, comic books. And I was like, this can't possibly be real. But yet, after the social unrest, I heard another personal story from someone. And I was like, this has to be true. And so I began to dig into it. And if any of you have never heard of the Tulsa Race Massacre, it happened. It happened over 100 years ago, and hundreds of Black people, natives, were basically killed, all of their property destroyed because of, obviously, racism. And I believe that's spiritual as well. So in my heart of hearts, if I'm a woman of color and I'm going out to inspire and lift underserved communities, why would I not go to Tulsa? And it was a whole 20-hour drive because I had to go in and meet people, guys. And I could just feel the torment. I could feel the pain. I could feel the suffering. I could feel the division, like, in my whole spirit, man. And I was just like, oh my gosh. So I just began praying ahead of time before the event that the people would not see division, that they would come together. And this is years and years of people being on one side of the road versus the other. And we saw communities come together. We saw people who didn't feel like there was representation of success, that there was representation of doing different lifestyle and still having a good time about it. It really blew our mind. Even to our Airbnb hostess, it says, I'm going to have smart people in our home. And Dr. Rao was there. We had such a cool multicultural group. It was Dr. Rao is Indian. He actually spoke. We had a celebrity big group that was part of it. And I actually had just reached out to his manager and said, hey, listen, you have this big bodybuilder guy, big Black guy. Well, he's Nigerian, but he's talking about eating all the time. Well, people don't realize he works out hours a day, right? So he might be selling the restaurant that he's promoting, but he's also selling disease and death, for people who don't understand that he's doing so much to combat what he's eating. Can we do a plant-based challenge? Can you guys come on board and help support our vision and get the word out about how to do this healthier with the vegan lifestyle? And so he did participate. He's very quiet, but it was nice to see other people see who he was and identify, oh, he's got on the black vegan tea and da 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 da. And so, of course, the engagement when you look online can be a gambit of everything. But I did love seeing other vegans say, finally, you're trying the vegan food and, oh, this is cool. And, right on. And like, are you going to start doing more vegan restaurants? And then you have, your trolls that are going to be negative. But again, it was still connection and engagement that hadn't happened before. And people who had never heard of veganism, they got to see it for the first time or hear about it for the first time. So that was exciting. And in addition to that, we were honoring the three living survivors, who was Miss Viola Ford Fletcher. She's 100. Well, now she's 109 years old. Her brother, Uncle Red, and Miss Mother Randall. So unfortunately, Miss Viola Ford Fletcher's brother passed away about 6 weeks after we came through. But to witness defiance, because that's all we have plenty of centenarians, but like I believe that they're living because of their story. And the lawsuit that they filed against the state for the city for that happening had been thrown out that past summer. And so it was just standing in solidarity with them, letting them know that they matter, even though we were thousands of miles away. We love them, we're supporting them, and that we're coming through and bringing any influence that we had to just lift them up. And I heard that most of her diet is plant-based too. Wow. Just so you, if you want to live to be 109, that's the ticket.
So I found something on Instagram just yesterday. It's a site called History in Color, and you just can scroll through and see videos of things that happened in the past. And one of them was the Black Wall Street in Tulsa, like 5 years after this happened. And you actually could see some of the people, like you said, defiance, who had built back and just came back after this horrendous, awful thing, and this is, of course, why we need Black History Month. I lived in Kansas City. That's not far from Tulsa. I didn't hear of this until 3 years ago. So it's just so important that the word get out so that we can just see things as they happened and go forward and make it better. So in terms of going forward better, what are some of the cool things that you have lined up with the Black Vegan Experience?
So the vision for this year is to our first event is April 13th of this year, so very close. It'll be the first time we actually do a gospel vegan experience. I've learned that a lot of church people do not want to mix with even a festival that has secular music and secular activities. So this one is going to be intentional about drawing them out, getting them connected, because we recognize that leadership is present, and we have the opportunity to share that through the churches, which is where historically Black people receive their information was from the schools and from the churches. So if we can tap into leaders, we can reach everyone. The choice is still going to be theirs, but I feel like we just need that all together. And then from there, we're going to Chicago, back to Atlanta, and to Durham, North Carolina. So, and in between all of those events, we're hoping to still have pop-ups and free community events here in the local area. And it's just exciting. I serve at one of the food pantries that I had no idea about until we had our event at their church. And then they also have a homeless shelter. So through their outreaches, and they do monthly outreaches, so I connect to them in the summer when I don't have events, I have been able to take our experiences, our story of veganism to all of these places alongside the church. At the food pantry, I'm bringing samples. When we do the outreaches in the community, I'm bringing food. We're sampling people. At the homeless shelter, I delivered vegan snacks for them on Veterans Day. And so I just my life is this work. And so I just tie it in, and I do my best to make it as personal as it is, because that's what life is all about, is relationship. And as long as people don't feel like you're trying to sell them or manipulate them into making choices, I believe they're open-minded and open-hearted.
So I want to ask you, Vonettia, about the tremendous growth of veganism in the Black community. When I was working on my book, Main Street Vegan, back in 2011, one of the questions that came up, and I have a little box in there of why does veganism look so white? And at the time, and we're talking 12, 13 years ago, it really did. And I was, pulling out all the Black celebrities and people that I knew that were and had been doing it. I mean, there've been amazing Black vegans for, 60 years. But now the most rapidly growing segment within veganism is Black women. So tell us why.
Well, I believe it's because of all of the health disparities that have impacted life. If you think about the different reproductive issues that I think more women of color have had to deal with, the influx of cancers related to hormonal imbalances that could have come from the hair chemicals that were used, the feminine, care products that were created with the intention of reaching communities that pride themselves, like the studies I've done, obviously, so the research that was for targeted towards Black and Latino women. So again, it's like, so you knew these things and you kind of like use them to sell products, but you didn't realize that this was going to cause, or maybe you did, the cancer. So the number one reason I do believe is to prevent these health issues. I know off the top of my head, 10 women of color who have had cancer. In the last 5 years, if not the last 2. And so where is it coming from? If we are not doing anything different, besides working out of the home that we did 50 years ago, then there's got to be a common denominator somewhere. And I believe it's just what's been put in the food, the processing, the different chemicals that were being used to maintain hygiene and, things like that. And so that's the aim. And then again, if you think about it, yeah, sure, if you believe traditionally the men are the head of the household, but who runs the house? We do. We buy the groceries, the cleaning supplies, things for the children, the entire family. We plan, we are the businesswomen of our households. And so if women are making those choices, why wouldn't it impact their entire family? And so it begins with one family. And then, like, let's say for my husband and I go travel, right? Even if he's not vegan, which he's not, that's totally his choice. But we go somewhere. Like, for example, we went to Hawaii for his best friend's wedding. Everyone around us adopted to my lifestyle because they said they can eat anywhere they wanted to, but they wanted to make sure I was taken care of.
Oh,
So even if it was only for a week, I had a group of friends and their extended family not hurting any animals while they had their lunch, dinner, and so forth and so on.
wow.
So to me, that's powerful, and it only takes one person to impact that change, and I really believe that's why.
Wow, that is powerful. So just in our last minute or 2 minutes, you are one powerful person. And I know your life is not easy. You have had to deal with rough stuff. You are having to deal with rough stuff as you go along. So just give us your take on how to live spiritually and strongly when things are not great.
Well, sometimes you do have to take a minute and cry. You have to get it out. And, in our weakness, God is made strong. And so I'm reminded that it's not my burden to bear alone, and that the community is what it is. But there are some times where I have to turn off all of my gadgets, my gizmos, and that can be hard sometimes when most of our work is done online. But just go into my closet, because then that way everybody knows this is my quiet time, leave me alone, and just take some minutes to meditate and pray and just be quiet and still. I have friends that I can reach out to. I have daily scriptures. I actually did 31 days of affirmations for January, and most of them came from scripture alone, which I don't think a lot of people knew about on my TikTok. But when I go and serve, that helps me stay grounded, and it helps me be reminded that it's bigger than me.
Oh, Vonettia,
Thank you.
some people, you just wish you could live in a neighborhood where everybody that you think is just as cool as can be could all be there together. But at least we have our electronic neighborhood, and that's wonderful. So Reverend Sarah has put the blackveganexperience.net in the chat. If you want to put other ways to find you, you mentioned TikTok and all of your various social media over there. We'd love to see it. And thank you so very much.